Charlie.
Welcome, welcome. And you may hear a little noise in the background. Everyone's excited about the show, including the pets. So, welcome to Saturday, May 22nd, live podcast number 12, the Viva Virtuoso weekly live podcast. And today we have a real treat for international and domestic audiences. We have a guest that's traveled many miles to entertain and bring his music to international audiences. And when you hear his story and hear about his music and hopefully check him out, you will hear his heart shine through everything he does. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you King Ibu. King, welcome to our podcast.
Hello, Warren. Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure. It's our pleasure. And we're here today. Nikki's back. So we'll probably be hearing from her throughout the podcast. So the three of us are going to have some fun today.
All
So
right.
I know you were a little out of breath. You sound pretty relaxed now, but we caught you just getting off work, didn't we?
That's right. Yeah. I am in New Mexico, to be precise. I'm in Las Cruces. When did I get here? About 4 or 5 days ago for studio recordings, studio sessions, and then 2 gigs. And we just finished the last gig of the day of the trip. And right after this, I'll jump on the plane and go back home to Las Vegas.
Well, how did the gigs go?
Oh, awesome. This is the first time playing after the pandemic. So very, very, very emotional, very special, very nerve-wracking at the same time. So I'm sure I was shaking throughout the show. But just this connection again, being able to be together and talk to people and exchange energies was amazing.
Yeah, you look pretty radiant. So I assume a good time was had.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And congratulations. Yes, congratulations on your grand reopening.
Thank you so much, Warren.
So we're going to get to America eventually, but my first question for you is, and I don't know how well our audience knows you, but hopefully very well by the time we're done. But you started in Senegal, which is a country I suppose many of our viewers are not familiar with. So if you could take us back to your youth and tell us about what are the sights, the sounds, the smells, the tastes, the atmosphere of your youth growing up in Senegal.
Wow. Growing up in the northern part of Senegal, which is Podor, at the border with Mauritania, was very special in the sense it was almost a what I can call crossroads, like cultural crossroads. So we had a lot of culture from Mauritania, a lot of culture, of course, from the other parts of Africa, and mostly the culture from the Fula ethnic group, or Pula, they call them. And this kind of mix brought to us, man, so many possibilities when it comes to sounds, different kinds of food, beliefs, spiritual stuff, and rhythms. So, and I grew up in this mosaic, if I may use the word, of cultures. And when you listen to my music, basically, it's just a reflection of what I was exposed to when I was a child. And Podor is just, man, we've produced a lot of great musicians and poets and intellectuals throughout the world now. And I'm fortunate and very lucky to be part of that culture and of that town.
And when I listen to your music, I definitely hear jazz overtones amongst many, many other styles. And it makes me wonder, when you were a child, was there a lot of music playing in your household? And it must have been varied, because what you do play seems very much a part of you.
Well, absolutely, yeah. I was really lucky, and as the story goes, my dad was one of the few ones to get a turntable, so that allowed me to be exposed to different kinds of music at a very young age. There were jazz, Wes Montgomery was there, Duke Ellington was there, Miles Davis was there, Nina Simone was there, what's the lady's name? Billie Holiday was there. Uh, so it was just this mixture of music that came from America and Europe that was consumed as if it were part of us already. So we didn't have this kind of barrier just because it came from another country. And we absorbed it, consumed it, listened to it, enjoyed it as if it was something from us. And the jazz thing, I've always been fascinated with jazz. And my understanding of jazz is improv, so improvising. And Senegalese music is full of improvisation. And that was almost the same thing. It was very easy for me to make the transition.
And so, what is some of the main instruments one would hear locally in Senegal that we might not be familiar with?
The talking drum, which is a two-sided, two-headed small drum that you put under your arm, and that has strings on it, and you change your tones by squeezing it or releasing it. Of course, the djembe, which is very popular now, and we have the sabah, which is mostly specific to that part of Africa, and we have the kora, which is a harp that's made of I believe, a piece of ebony wood for the neck, and fishing lines, and the gourd, and I believe the box is made of the face of the box is made of cowhide. And you would listen to a smaller version of the ngoni, which is hodu or halam, that's what they call them over there. And sometimes they have one string, sometimes they have 3 to 7 strings. I don't play any of those, but I've seen them around. And of course, we have a bunch of percussion instruments, depending on the ethnic group you're from.
So you tend to play a lot of guitar in addition to the percussion and I believe the talking drum, if I recognize the instruments correctly. But how did you tell us about your first guitar? How did you get access to it?
Oh, so this was the challenge for us then. A guitar was not available to us. So at first, I would go and see the few people that had guitars in the town of Podor that I knew of, and I kind of become the little assistant. If they need cigarettes, they'll send me to the shop. If they need water or tea, they'll send me to go get tea. Or if they want me to make tea for them, I'll do that. And while I do that, my main focus was to see what they were playing, like the chords they were playing, the form they were playing. I'll memorize them, run home, grab a piece of paper and pencil, and write them down so I can remember them later. And once in a while, I'm sure if I ever behaved, they'll allow me to touch the guitar for like a little while. And that went on for the most part of my learning curve. And later on, we would try to make guitars on our own. And that consisted in finding some wood, plywood somewhere in different places, putting them together with very limited tools and no expertise. And for strings, I remember we used to get breaks. So they were never in tune. And we played and played until we got our calluses, basically, till the fingers bled, in the words of Brian Adams. and that was the first experience. I was already in what you guys call senior high school. And during the holidays, I took a little gig working. My mom didn't want me to do that. And whatever I made, I spared and I saved, and I bought my first guitar then, which was a cheap guitar made somewhere in Spain.
Well, it's a good thing I did not have to do that and try to make my own piano, because I think not only I'm not mechanical enough to do it, I probably would have never never played, but I applaud your efforts.
Thank you.
Maybe there's a picture of that first guitar sitting around someday you can post.
Oh, that would be awesome if I can find it.
So, at what point did you decide to be a musician? And that was kind of an unusual choice for you, wasn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. Sorry about that. That's my friend's dog.
He wants to answer for us.
That's right. He wants to say for it. So I'll see if I can. I'll proceed, and I apologize again.
No worries.
No
We're a
worries.
pet-friendly show. Very pet-friendly.
That's awesome. And if you kind of know a little bit about that part of Africa, we have the caste system in the society. So a certain class is supposed to play music. A certain class is not supposed to play music. So briefly, I'll explain. I was from the class that was not supposed to play music. So from the get-go, of course, it was a battle. But it wasn't that bad because I did manage, and my mom, who was very supportive, did not prevent me from playing. But I fell in love with music around 12, and that love never died, it never faded. And it's been such a good thing for me, very therapeutic for me, very relaxing. It's allowed me to be here today. Thank you. To have all those opportunities I've had in my life, just by embracing it and learning it, and carving my little way in this big world, and speaking my voice. But naturally, in Senegal, I was not supposed to play music. That didn't prevent me from playing music. And what I wanted to translate to others is that it's just a job like any other job. I could have been an officer or something else. Go ahead, Nikki.
Sorry, I hate to interrupt you, but and I know we've talked about this before, but can you explain a little bit about why you weren't supposed to, why it wasn't acceptable in the society that you grew up in for you to play music, for you to consider that as a career?
So when I mentioned the classes, in those ethnic groups, or the ethnic group I'm from, there's a class that is supposed to play music and sing for us, for my class. We call them griots, and the easiest translation would be a troubadour.
Mm-hmm.
But more than a troubadour, they were historians, because they kept the lineages alive, the genealogy. That was their forte. At the same time, they were advisors to the kings, to royalty. At the same time, they were the MCs when there was a ceremony. So they were supposed to play it for me.
You were stepping on some toes.
Absolutely. Many toes. And I broke a few, I think. But
and how accepting was the artisan class of with you, or was that something that they felt uncomfortable with? Did you have to make some breakthroughs there?
I mean, I didn't play, at first I didn't play purely traditional instruments. So I was very smart about it. I didn't take it away from them. I played the guitar, which is, however you want to look at it, it's a European instrument. Even though some claim it was inspired by whatever. So when I was dealing with those people, I did not come and take what was theirs. I learned how to play it, but when we were, for example, gigging or learning or writing, I wasn't playing the instrument, I was playing the guitar. That was a way for me to make them comfortable, so that they won't feel threatened that I'm kind of taking something away from them. So I can learn from them, and so they can open up, be a little bit more at ease with me. And after we finished, not for making a living at the time, so they were comfortable doing it with me. Sorry about that. So
he agrees.
So what happened was, So what happened? So I'm very sorry about that. So
no
happened
problem.
Was,
sorry, is his name? What's his name? Charlie?
It wasn't easy. Charlie, yeah.
Charlie,
So
what do you want to say? Can we ask Charlie a couple of questions?
That's right. Charlie, what do you want to say? Charlie. I think he thinks there's something. But anyway, so it was an easy transition with that.
So when you were playing with others, were you playing at first as a sideman, or were you fronting your own band? How did that experience get cultivated?
As a sideman at first.
Okay.
As a sideman to ease myself into it. It was done very intuitively and in a very organic way. I understood very early on that wasn't mine to do, so I had to kind of like tread lightly, and I understood that, and really that allowed me to be able to play and still play. But I wasn't a frontman at first. I was just a sideman, and it was an opportunity for me to learn from those guys.
And so at some point you decide to come to America, or at least your first trip over the pond, right?
That's right. Yeah. The first trip was a training trip that I don't want to discuss much, and the second one, I came on my own, and I went to LA, and that's where the other side of the journey started. And I
So many
met.
people.
Say it again.
So many people head out to LA.
That's right, and it was weird. Never from Africa, right? Usually it's from the other states, but for me it was very tough from Africa, from Senegal to LA, and. As daunting as it was very educational. And if I had to do it all over again, I'll do it again, because that's really what made me the musician, the businessman, and the artist I'm today. Absolutely.
So did you have contacts out here when you arrived, or was it you got off the bus, or you got a cab at LAX and said, "Take me to the nearest hotel"?
No, I was lucky enough. I had a support system already in LA, a great support system before I came out to Los Angeles, and
And
that
did
was the
that
reason I actually went there.
and so did that result in being able to gig and meet other musicians fairly quickly then?
Absolutely. I lived in West LA. I was a few minutes away from Venice, a few minutes away from, LA minutes to Hollywood. And there was music around me, and I looked for it and I went after it. And it was so much easier than where I came from. Like I mentioned earlier, it was even tough to find a guitar rather than, but here it was so easy and just so natural for me to be in the environment and learn so much so very quickly.
Yeah, some pretty big music stores out in LA. I'm sure you'd have no problem between Guitar Center and Sam Ash and
That's
all the
right.
other stores. You probably had a pretty good selection.
Absolutely.
Uh, and so, what kind of gigs were you pursuing at that time? Was it club, cafe, parties?
We did them all. We did coffee shops, we did parties, we did a few venues. There was a venue in Santa Monica. I always forget the name, but there was a cool venue there that was early on open to exposing world music. And what you have to understand is the music we were playing, though a few Americans knew of it or knew about it, the majority didn't know. So we had the language going against us, or I had the language going against me. I had the music going against me. In a sense, I had to play something that people could understand and appreciate. So that's when I understood I had to make a lot of compromises so that I can communicate with the audiences here in the States.
And maybe it's a good time to just define for our audience what, in your words, is world music.
It's a combination of all the styles of music one is exposed, but in a more widely sense, if I may use that image. For example, if most of us are exposed to so many styles of music, some of them maybe at some point we'll drop them, others, we'll keep playing them, listening to them, so on and so forth. But world music, very shortly to me, it is just a combination of all those styles that we've been exposed to, and we find our voice by using those elements. So in my case, if I say world music, the biggest element will be the West African, and I have to be very specific. It has to be Senegalese, and I have to go even a step further and say it has to be Fula or Pular and Hassania, which is a part of Mauritania. Because I come from, my mom is Mauritanian, my dad is from Senegal. So I have to celebrate both cultures and morph them in a way that I can have my own voice.
Nikki, anything you'd like to ask?
Yeah, loads of things. I mean, about Mauritania. I want to know more about Senegal. I want to know more about, you mentioned some of the greats that lived in that area in Liberia and all of that. But I don't think we have time for that much. All right, one more question regarding that particular part of Africa and what you were saying about the social classes and the castes and the so-called ethnicities. I happen to believe that we're not all that different, and frankly, ethnicities are more or less a man-made concept. But okay, how many talents do you think are missing the opportunities that you managed to create for yourself in that structure? Is that structure still in place? Are there more people like you breaking out of it, learning from each other, from these communities? I'd rather call them communities. Um, how much talent is hidden in Senegal and other places because of this?
Absolutely, great question. And thank God, there are a ton of people now coming out, if I may use that, and just saying, you know what, these are different times, different ways, so they can do whatever they want. And as long as I live, that's one of my missions, to express to people, if this is what you want to do, go for it, and don't let others or some centuries old system prevent you from expressing yourself and finding your voice. And like you said earlier, it's a shame. It's a shame. I'm sure we've lost so much. We've lost so much as far as talent, because I've seen a lot of guys that I know personally that play like at the professional level, guitar or other instruments. But guess what? Based on their last name, their family,
Wow.
they cannot play live or gig or play in public. So
Wow.
yeah, and I think until now, maybe the society has understood the value of music, the value of the showbiz, because we've seen a lot of guys. We've had guys in major movies here in America now from Senegal. We've had great names.
Yep.
But the joke is they did not pay me to plug them in the show, so I won't plug them in. Just but yeah, we've had, if you look it up in Senegal, we have great names that have been in major productions here throughout the world. In Europe, in France, because that's our go-to country, which is even weird why I chose LA instead of going to France. It's another question. And I can tell you, I knew someone when I was at the university who was a professor and who played guitar like somebody who went to school for it. But he couldn't play gigs. He couldn't write music. He couldn't, compose or create albums. And there's so much of it. But now, after understanding that, musicians can bring the dough, musicians can be, heads of families by only playing music and being in the show business. Believe me, now they have changed, and they have no choice but to change. They have no choice but to change.
And credit to you as for being a little bit of an icebreaker, perhaps in accelerating that change and setting the example.
I'm glad I was part of it, and I'll keep doing it because it does make sense. I studied to do something else. I was trained to be something else, and I excelled at it. Without bragging, I excelled at it, and that is already a source of conflict with others around me, because, oh wow, how come he's so good at this? He's not going to do this. He's going to learn from the basics to eventually having a certain level that you can gig decently. He left this that he was so good at, or we thought that was his mission in life, that was his life to be. But he said no. He picked this thing that was frowned upon, this thing they thought would never feed me. because there was that fear too, out of compassion. I'm sure my family would think, oh, wow, you want to drop this career and go do this? They were maybe a little bit worried. But by me pursuing it, till now, I've been in it for a little while now, I think if somebody comes across my life, my story, that can kind of galvanize them a little bit and give them, like the courage to go and do it.
Oh, commendable.
Fantastic. Yeah.
And somehow or another, you end up starting in Los Angeles, but making it over to Las Vegas. And maybe you can tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. Interesting jump. I was very fortunate to work with a great vocalist in LA, and we got a small gig in Mammoth Lakes. From Mammoth Lakes, we went to Las Vegas, and Las Vegas was really for me. In military words, the war, if that makes sense, the actual war, because
The
that's
great
when I was
battle.
really. That's right. I was in the trenches, and that's when the war started for me. That was the initial battle. That was the initiation, the baptism of fire. And it was at a level that was very advanced for my sake at the time, I have to admit. I was a band leader playing in the lounges with for the MGM Mirage Company and the sister casino they had around. And I was a band leader with people that went to Juilliard or Berkeley. So you can imagine a self-taught person that doesn't write or read music. Thank God now I read a little bit of charts, but I never learned how to write or read music. And I had to put those guys together in a band so that we can play something decent for the audiences to enjoy and be hired in a very competitive world in Las Vegas without having any connections, basically. We had to audition and to get the gig. Go ahead, Warren.
And by this time, you're now singing, right?
Yep, this time I'm singing and playing guitar and playing bass and talking drum.
And composing?
And composing.
And when you got to Vegas, how many songs did you have under your belt?
I already had an album, my first album, when I was in California, before I went to Vegas. So it's an interesting thing because if you ask me, that's the worst thing I've ever done. If you ask me, and you know how critical we are to ourselves, musicians. But guess what? The song was picked out of that album to be in a movie in Hollywood. Go figure.
Yep.
So, and that's why I don't regret it. Though I say that was the worst thing. It was my right after engineering school. I haven't worked in a studio yet. I got my certification in Pro Tools only, so I haven't even studied sound extensively, and haven't worked in a studio. And I decided, to invest in a very small home studio, very basic stuff. I recorded 10 songs, I think, and the rest is history. Wait is in a movie called Constellation with greats such as Billy D. Williams. If you know who that guy is, you can look him up.
Sure do.
Yeah.
Gabriel
Of
Union,
course.
Zoe Saldana,
Yeah.
Hill Harper. So that really, and all those things, like I said at some point the last time we spoke, Warren, is they kind of validated me as an artist. They made me feel comfortable in my position. I said, okay, I have my place here in this trench. Because if all this have come from my efforts, being a band leader in a casino in Las Vegas, recording an album and a song is picked to be in a movie in Hollywood, and I don't have an agent. Very important. I tell all the young guys I talk to, I'm an independent musician. So I almost do it all myself. Once in a while, I find a very kind soul who says, you know what, I like what you do, or I like your efforts, or I like your person, I'll help you with your music. So without all that, it didn't stop me.
Well, there's so many aspects to the business. I mean, there's a legal aspect, there's a financial aspect, there's a booking aspect, there's a public relations aspect, there's a media aspect. How did you acquire these skills? Were you just around the right kind of people, or trial and error?
I think still trial and error. I'm still making mistakes, and like that movie, I signed a very bad contract, very bad contract. You know, I instead of getting my royalties, I got paid a one-time fee, for example. If I were in the right frame of mind, I would have signed a different contract. I went on to do another thing for a company based in San Diego that worked with the zoo. I did some music for them, some vocals, and some played a lot of instruments in the project. Once again, without having that legal, aspect under control, I did the wrong thing again. And even to date, I'm sure I've played how many concerts? Do I get the performance royalties? My music is being played all over the world. Do I get the royalties that I needed? No. When I go to Europe and I perform, I tour, like in Norway, I toured twice in Norway, if my memory serves me right. On top of my pay, what I'm being paid for the gig, my per diem, and so on and so forth, I get another check. So all those aspects you mentioned earlier, I'm not doing them justice at all. So that's one side of it that I keep telling the younger people, you know what, before you get into this, if you want to do this seriously, make sure you hire the right people.
Very good advice. And back to Las Vegas, I mean, you have me thinking, because I know, and I've been formally educated, and yet I know if I were in front of a band of the caliber that you had to pick up the baton or give instructions to or make corrections to or call out people, especially that first time, man, I'm sweating buckets doing that if it's me, right? So how'd you make it through it? And how long did it take before it started becoming easier and more natural?
Honestly, the leadership part and the people skills, based on my other life, I studied leadership in my other life, and my training was in leadership. Briefly, I'll just say this briefly. I was an officer. I went to the academy to become an officer in the army. So that experience, I'm so grateful to that till the day I die. Gave me so much and made me such a better person, and gave me a better understanding of human relations and how to deal with people and situations. So that was really what has helped me in many, many, many situations. And when I was given the band to lead at that time, to me it was like just a unit in the army, based on the size and the mission and the tools we had to use and the missions we had to accomplish. That was really what took a lot off of my shoulders. And since I'm always wanting to learn music, which I love, that was a great opportunity for me to learn from these guys. So for me to be able to learn from them, I have to come in as a human being, make sure they like me first. I'm a cool guy to hang with. And once I get that going, I create some kind of relationship. I bridge the gap emotionally and, if you want, culturally. Then I get to deal with those guys, And in the end, I was the one paying them too, so that helped.
And in the course of your career, you've played with some pretty famous people. Any highlights or any very memorable musicians?
Oh, wow, you touched on it. That's the best part of the whole thing for me. This kid from Podor, I'm sure you've never heard of Podor until I mentioned it, from this part of Senegal that's very remote. Even in Senegal, it's a remote place because in those countries, everything happens in the capital city. It's not like here, where you can get everything. You have Nashville, you have LA, and so on and so forth. So coming from that, being aware of it, and so grateful for all the great things that have happened to me, it is huge to me. That's the best part of it. That's the one thing at the end of the day I said, regardless of whatever happened, whatever's happening, whatever's going to happen, I think I have this to hold on to. And I'm so grateful for it, and it's such a blessing. Tim Weisberg, I played with him when I don't even know, like, certain chords, I don't even know him, Warren. You went to the school for music. I don't know those chords. I mean, rhythms, I know my rhythms. I got my rhythms. I got my own songs. And I have my personality that allows me to stand side by side with those guys and bring something to the table that can help everybody. Poncho Sanchez from Cuba, like awesome percussionist, right? Sharing the stage with that dude. Bob Marley's band, I shared the stage with them, the Wailers. Femi Kuti, the son of Fela, I've shared the stage with him. The Dark Side of the Moon, the band from with David Seymour, right? David Gilmour.
Pink Floyd.
Pink Floyd, the singer, the
Yep.
other guy, what's his name? Dalton.
Dave
Is it
Gilmore?
Dalton?
Oh.
Not the guitar player, but there's a singer that sang for them for a little while, and now he does his own stuff. So I've shared the stage with that dude, and God, other names that I don't want to forget. The people I'm working with right now in bluegrass. These are big names in bluegrass, and I'm fusing West African music with bluegrass. That's this gig for these days here.
That I want to hear.
Absolutely, and I'll make sure you guys get to it when we're done recording and when we do another show, or if there's a video for it. And the big one for me has to be, and still is, not the movies, not the big gigs at the universities. It's Carlos Santana.
Oh, I knew he was going to say that.
I have
never heard of him.
That's right.
Who is that again?
That's right.
Carlos who?
What does he play?
You know, this dude from Mexico, very nice dude from Mexico, that plays a little bit of guitar and sings a little bit. So things like that, when they happen, and I tell everybody that I meet, and I tell them that if you know me a little bit, I don't brag. I don't need to brag. I know who I am. I say to share with people and to remind them that which you wake up for every day is attainable. I don't know how.
Yes.
You don't know how. But when you're ready, whatever you believe in, will make that thing happen in a way that you'll be surprised.
And even
absolutely.
Even though, you know, obviously you're coming off this celebratory mood, doing your first live gig, it's apparent that in the last year, you've picked up quite a bunch of skills. And maybe you can spend some time telling us how you kill time during the pandemic.
I use my tank. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, and I've always been what they call in French polyvalent, la polyvalence. A lot of people frown upon it, jack of all trade, blah, 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 blah. And I'm against that concept because I've believed in it since I was a kid, and I keep living my life that way. I always wanted to do that. And I wanted to be able at least to do something decent in the different things I'm involved in. The video aspect, the lighting aspect, the editing aspect, the recording aspect, the performance aspect. So last year, when the situation came about, I had a few choices. Most of my friends, some gave up. Some started doing live on Facebook for a little while and then gave up because they weren't making anything and it wasn't worth it. Others went back to school for certain things online. Others found other things to do. For me, as tough as it was an opportunity to put to paper some of the compositions that I've been working on as far as I can remember. I have a little small studio at home, nothing fancy, and I started recording. I recorded a song for the COVID-19 situation where I put a few languages in French, English, Wolof, and Pula. And after that, I just kept going. I recorded about 19 to 20 songs, did the montages. Most of them, I have 2 or 3 of them that were made by friends and myself, but most of them, I shot the videos myself, found the footage, learned how to do the montages, and pushed them on YouTube. At least I have that step, and to me, that was huge, because that's allowing me now to look at my music with fresh eyes. So it makes it more exciting. Not only I haven't played for a year, but playing now with new music, it's almost like the beginning of another journey. It's like the beginning of another battle.
And Nikki, please jump in. I know I'm hogging the mic here, and I know you have some interesting questions in your pocket.
Music. No, you guys are talking music. So, well, you know what? Let's get back to the fact that you just came back. That's why we were a little bit late with this live podcast today, because you just got back from your first live gig since the beginning of the pandemic. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you were talking about being connected with the audience, and you mentioned being nervous. You're going to tell us about that in a minute, and about that experience, speaking of the pandemic and everything. But tell us specifically about, you learn all of this stuff, the video creation, the online live thing, and this and that. What is so different? What exactly is so different in creating and performing, for an audience that's online, and in creating and performing in front of a live audience?
Hmm. It's a good one. Thank you. Uh, I'm a live guy.
Charlie agrees.
He agrees. Charlie agrees. I'm a live guy. That's how I learned music. That's how I performed. That's how I studied music. So that's all I knew when it came to music. That's all I knew. And having now, or having last year, to stop all that and kind of get a new identity, become another kind of performer, was huge. And it's still very challenging for me. Very challenging for me. And thank God, I dive in and say, you know what? It's something that I can learn. It's a skill that I can acquire. I'll keep doing. But that connection is not there. And which is the connection I'm used to as a live person, as a live musician, and being able, because if I'm playing and people are around, they are doing me a big, 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 big favor. I'm getting so much from them that allows me to be able to be me and perform. There was a painter that used to say a piece of art is like a Spanish garden, right? They were known then by being very poor. In a sense, if you don't bring your fruit, you'll die of hunger. So a show to me is like that. If you don't bring a certain kind of understanding, a certain kind of experience, you won't be able to enjoy it. And it's as simple as that. So I bring what I know, my experiences, my tastes, my skills, and the audience brings, more importantly, the energy, the capacity to understand what I'm doing, the capacity to speak with me, communicate with me, and that makes it the whole thing for me.
And
Do
I
you
tell you,
think
when
those two worlds, the online world and the live performance world, do you think those two could ever merge? Is there any chance of that?
I mean, if you look at the numbers, marketing, we can do it. We're humans, we can do whatever we have to do at hand to survive. And when it became an absolute necessity, guess what? We did it. Uh,
We did it.
Now
Yep.
it becomes a matter of preference, right? We overcame all that. Now it becomes a matter of preference. This is still new, so we're not used to it as we were when it was live music. So it will take us a while to get used to that, I believe. But the connection, obviously, is different. Is different. Yeah.
I just have to tell our audience who may not have heard King's music yet, and I don't know if it's a geographical thing, but when I listen to your music, it gives me that same feeling that I feel, and hear me out, when I hear Caribbean music, or I hear the Beach Boys, or I
Mhm.
hear Tahitian music, where I just want to be by the beach with an ice cold drink and my toes in the water and on a sunny day. It speaks to me in
Wow.
that way. And Senegal has no lack of beaches, and I'm
Right.
wondering if there's anything about the climate or that feel and vibe that you intentionally bring to your music.
Yeah. Wow. That's what it is, and it's such a compliment to be classified in that group. And I was telling Terry the other day, it's the same thing. It's what is part of me that comes out when I play music. And I've cultivated that since the beginning. At some point, I wanted to go to school. At some point, I wanted to go to school, study like everybody else. But guess what? I convinced myself not to do it. It has its advantages, and of course, Bob Marley, as far as I know, he never went to school. Jimi Hendrix, as far as I know, never went to school. I am nowhere near those guys, but at least they've showed me that they can do it. And what I play, if you have an idea of where I come from, you can close your eyes and see the places I come from, hear the music from the place I come from, smell, even like the smells, the food, so on and so forth, the landscapes of the place where I come from. And it's purposefully done. The way I play guitar, if I want to explain that to someone, it's the percussion stuff that I studied when I was young that I used to play the rhythms I play. I mean, chords, I don't know much about chords. I may know one or two chords. I'm joking, but I know a few, but that's not my thing. My thing remains, how can I treat rhythms, approach rhythms so that I can bring something that's understandable, because music is communication for me, and that's enjoyable.
And you do establish those grooves that were nothing else happening on top. You could just sit back and listen to the groove and the rhythm guitar and just the chord changes the way it is. But naturally, having the vocals and the arrangements on top of it enhances it. But it does just take you right to the tropics, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Right in the middle of that, wanting to have a good seafood meal, and enjoy the salt water.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, before we end, if you guys allow me, of course, I just wanted to say what allowed me last year to find a way, of doing things was this shift, because now it's no longer me going to a coffee shop or to a venue and performing for people. It's me coming to you through YouTube, Facebook, social media in general. And the struggle, it's a big struggle, it's still a struggle, to get the amount of subscribers you need, the amount of views, the amount of watch hours you need to be able even to monetize. So same thing for Facebook and other platforms. It's a big challenge. And how do you replace what you used to make while performing before? So, and it becomes just a new thing, a new way of doing it. And one has no choice but, to comply and learn the new skills and keep bugging people over and over again. For all those people watching and listening and that are going to listen and watch this show, understand your party is to go to this YouTube channel, to my YouTube channel, and subscribe and be a member of the community. You have such a big responsibility now. It's in your hands. It's no longer in the record label's hands. The hands are like before. By subscribing to our YouTube channels, by watching our videos, sharing them, commenting, so on and so forth, interacting with us, in other words, that's how you help us build this business. And that's how you become part of the community. And you're very, very important as the music and the content.
And what would you have to add to that, Nikki, that being a little bit of your specialty?
Yeah, well, frankly, music to my ears. Um, so no, it's something that, frankly, I believe should have become much more a part of every business, every career, in particular visual music, visual arts, music, and all of that. This should have been done long ago. Frankly, we should be teaching some of this in school, and some of not only the social media and the online aspect of it, because we have at least two generations so far that were born into the digital world, into the connected world, and we're still not teaching them how to use this properly. And you're talking about handling legal matters and booking and this and that as a musician, and then plus this online thing. Frankly, all of that is something we should be teaching in elementary and secondary schools, and we should be teaching children and students and university going students, whichever area they're studying. We should be teaching them the proper usage of the technology and channels
Absolutely.
available to them today to build a career.
Yep. Absolutely.
So
Yeah, I'm waiting. I'm waiting for the class.
hopefully we'll get there soon.
I'm waiting for the class, How Not to Get Ripped Off as a Musician 101, to be compulsory.
You
At
and me
least
both.
at least an online class.
That's right. You and me both. You and me both. You and me both. And my understanding was we are doing this for.
Yeah, I think designers and painters and others would also want in on that.
Please go ahead. I think, are you on mute now? Can you hear us okay, King?
Yeah, I think we lost the sound. And
Okay.
he's moving. And I don't
And
know if
he's
he can
talking.
hear us. No,
Well,
we can't hear you.
while we're figuring that out, I will promote King Ibu. You want to follow him on Twitter and Instagram, but especially you want to get out to his YouTube station and listen to as much as you can, especially from this past year where he self-produced his videos. You will find some very stylized, not just music, but very good montages. If you're a fan of Beverly Hills, or you're a fan of Las Vegas, or you're a fan of cars, you're going to see some beautiful, beautiful shots and beautiful montages of King's work. I know we're trying to get him back online because we don't want to close without him having his parting words. But what I said before stands. If you want to feel like you're taking this trip around the world and you want to have that feel where you're not quite sure where you are, but if the sun feels warm and the drink feels fresh and cold, King's music is what you want to listen to. I know he's in New Mexico now, but he does. I expect, and hopefully we will get him back on. But hopefully he'll be back setting up camp in Las Vegas and doing his touring and performing for lots of people. Do we have you, King? We have everything but the sound, but we have your wonderful smile.
No, still no sound. We have everything but the sound.
For some reason.
Well, see, that's what happens with live shows and with live performances. And King is right. This can't happen in front of an audience, right? If nothing else, if your mic goes dead, you can just, sing louder.
Yeah, or dance.
So,
but it must be mute because I can't hear Charlie. And not quite sure how we handled the tail end of this. Would like to have some comments from King before we take off. But maybe we'll give him a chance to let him come back on. But Nikki, what are your observations in hearing what King has to say? I'm really struck by his path. I mean, it's an incredible story.
Yeah, perhaps naively, I'm always surprised to learn that there are still places in the world that, where if you're a different, ethnicity or a different this or a different that, you're not allowed this, you're not allowed that. And I mean, I'm realistically, I'm fully aware that that's the world that we live in for the most part, and that we still need to change a lot of things. So, and another thing I was surprised with is that King, by the way, I think do we have you back? Do we have sound back?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Hey!
Oh, fantastic. Yes, we can. And he's back to close the show.
All right,
So
thank
another
you.
thing that surprised
Le
me
roi
is
est ici.
when you pointed out that not a lot of people in the U.S. are familiar with world music.
That's right.
So I wasn't aware of that. That's another thing I learned today.
Mhm.
Hopefully, you're changing that as we speak, and you continue changing it. I know for a fact that it's big in Europe, and it has been big for a while.
Mhm.
So, hopefully that spills over into other parts of the world because it is world music, and
Absolutely.
we need to be introduced to everything and anything that we can. So
Absolutely.
yeah, I actually learned quite a bit today.
That's awesome. That's
And
awesome.
King, can you take a moment and remind our audience of the best places to hear your music, what they should be looking for, any particular songs or albums you want to highlight for them?
It will be mostly on YouTube, and it's King Ibu, KINGIB as in boy U. And I would invite everyone, if this is your first time checking out my music or my work, there's a playlist that the new releases between last year and New Year, and this year, I'm sorry, that will definitely give you a great idea of what I do, and you may understand the efforts I'm taking to compromise so that we can communicate. Though I'm not speaking the same language, I'm using elements that they can be as exotic as they can be, but if you give it a chance, they're very familiar to you, and we'll be able to communicate. So King Ibu on YouTube.
Okay, King. Well, it's been a pleasure having you. The time has gone very fast, and we just can't tell you how much we enjoyed having you as a guest. You will be a friend of the show's forever, and I, for one, feel a little bit smarter after having listened to this and learned about your path, and certainly everything you do exudes love, and the world needs a lot of that these days. So we thank you for that.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate this.
Absolutely. And with that, the show's a wrap.
Thank you for being with us.